Welcome to With One Accord, a brief time presented by the Houston Chamber Choir each Monday and Friday to join us together and to be renewed and refreshed through the power of choral music. I'm April Harris, Manager of Operations, and I'm thrilled to host today's Education Spotlight. In late August 2020, the Texas Music Educators Association, or TMEA, announced that its upcoming annual conference would be virtual. When I first learned this news, my mind, as I imagine was the case for others, raced with a million thoughts. What will this new virtual concept look like? How will it approach the current challenges facing music educators, specifically choral? However, my mind's most prominent thoughts were not questions, they were ideas and dreams, shared with me by my interview guests this summer. The music educators that I had the pleasure of speaking with, while they have varied plans for the school year, all shared the same desire to keep learning, teaching, progressing, adapting. Their visions make me look forward to challenges such as the 2021 TMEA conference, as occasions for dreamers and achievers to show the evolving nature of choral music. I recently had the opportunity to chat with Dr. Deanna Joseph and Dr. Kristina Caswell MacMullen, two accomplished educators with multiple achievements in choral conducting and clinic work. It was a pleasure learning about their personal journeys, which led to such amazing successes that benefit the current growth of choral education. In our brief conversation, both Dr. Joseph, who is set to appear as a guest clinician at the 2021 TMEA conference, and Dr. MacMullen, who wowed with her stellar work at the Houston Chamber Choir's choral clinic earlier this year, provided me with such optimism. Their grace and focus are tenets I have witnessed continuously within our choral educators and students, continuing the hope for the bright future of choral music, preserving and celebrating this beautiful art form. I'm joined today by two fantastic guests, Dr. Deanna Joseph, Associate Professor of Music and Director of Choral Activities at the Georgia State University School of Music, and Dr. Kristina Caswell MacMullen, Associate Professor of Choral Studies at the University of North Texas. Dr. Joseph, Dr. MacMullen, thank you so much for joining me today. How are you?
Doing well. Thanks for having us.
Absolutely.
Doing well, thank you. We're glad to be here.
Awesome. So I'd like to just get started by learning more about your origin stories. When did you realize your love for choral music, and when did that love transition into an aspiration to become an educator of this art form?
So I was really fortunate when I was in sort of younger elementary school. My music teacher at this very small Catholic school told my parents that I should audition for a children's choir that was, I'm from Pittsburgh, and so my parents, who are both hairdressers, took me to this audition. And that was really sort of the turning point in my life, because this children's choir was amazing. I had this fantastic female conductor as a role model. I was in the choir for 9 years, and it was a Kodai-based education, so I learned how to read music that way. And I think that I was also able to, at a very young age, see a woman conduct. And I looked up to her a lot. And so that was really my start. And I think it was sort of in the back of my mind. And yeah, so I just developed a love for choral music from a very young age. And even though I did that, I actually didn't start college as a music major. I started as an English and education major, and I just wasn't quite sure that I wanted to commit to music for the rest of my career. But then after my first year of college, I switched into music education. And yeah, when I studied conducting was when it really first dawned on me, like, I really love this. I think this is something that's, you know, a combination of things I love. And so that was how I kind of got my path.
So neither of my parents went to college, and that meant for me that they let me pick what I wanted to do. And so I loved being in choir. I was in choir when I was in elementary school and middle school and high school also. And I loved it. I really found, you know, a place to belong and something that I was good at. And so my parents had zero jurisdiction over my major. They were just excited that I was going to college. And so they didn't flinch when I said I want to go into music. And I actually started as a performance major, which is what many young musicians believe they'll do. They believe they'll be performers on Broadway. And I had those dreams. And I got to Michigan State University and realized very quickly that there were a lot of talented people in the world, and that it might be wise for me to come up with, you know, a backup plan to my Broadway ambitions. So I switched to a double major, and then I started down the path of education and fell in love with it, and dropped the performance major, and just really, you know, when I look back, I realized I just loved choir so much, and it was really choir that was what propelled me forward into music. Yeah, that's how I got my start.
And then where did education come in for you as an educator? Where was it, I just have to have this moment. This is the moment that I know that I want to touch the lives of the youth, the young musicians all over?
I actually had a moment. I don't think that's, you know, common, but I think I always wanted to be a teacher. You know, I'm the oldest of four, and I can remember playing school with my younger siblings and, you know, things like that. But as far as, you know, to me, conducting is teaching. And one time when I was in undergrad, my choral director there went out to do an all-state or something, and we had this mini performance that was happening at our school, very informal, but he said, I'm going to be gone, and he asked 3 undergrads, I was one of them, to conduct on this informal concert. And so I got to work with the top choir in a rehearsal in preparation, and then I got to conduct in concert. And when I was up there doing that, it was just like, I had this like moment where it was like time froze, and it's like, this is what you have to do. And that was it. And so that's why I decided to follow the conducting path and get my master's in conducting and doctorate eventually and all those things. So.
And how about for you, Dr. MacMullen? What was that aha moment as far as becoming an educator?
I will never forget one of my first internships. I sat down, and it was actually the first time I observed a woman as a conductor, Nancy Lang, terrific educator in Michigan. And I was actually the first time I had gotten up in front of a choir, and I felt this kind of energy, excitement, relationship between the group and myself that I hadn't experienced. But I wouldn't have said I plan to be a conductor. I would have only said I plan to be a teacher. And so I think for me, I've been on a journey in acknowledging and seeing other people who are like myself doing this. It was not until I was in my late 20s that I ever sang for a woman, Sandra Snow, at Michigan State. Mm-hmm. And that was pretty life-changing. And so working with her really inspired me to go on and to teach at the collegiate level.
Now, you both are clinicians. As clinicians, you both receive invitations from all over to impart your wisdom and expertise on young musicians. What does your preparation for a choral clinic look like? Like, what are the steps that you go through to make sure it's successful and to your standards?
I think the biggest thing for me is selection of repertoire. I think that, you know, you can do a lot with a program that you believe in and that you feel like the students are going to really take to. And so if I get an invitation to conduct an all-state or an honor choir somewhere, I usually go back and forth with the teachers quite a bit because I found that every state is different. The selection process is different. The type of students that come to these events, and the level of difficulty of repertoire that will work, things like that. So kind of go back and forth and ask for a lot of feedback. And then once we come up with something that we all feel good about, then I have the confidence to feel like, okay, this is going to go really well, I hope. And I hope they're going to love the music. So I guess that's the most important thing to me on that topic.
Yes.
It's different with every ensemble and every environment. So I spend quite a bit of time studying the music that's been done in the past. And also there's always an organizer. So I'll also ask the organizer which program, because they may give you 7 years of background programming. Which program worked really well, because not all programs work well in different environments with different students and different organizations. And so I really rely heavily on the leadership in place to give me honest feedback. And so that's an important thing. I also try to think about how the pieces can bring forth opportunities for the students to perhaps explore really important things, like their own personal value or how they are able to express things helpfully, those sorts of questions that are much more important than music, honestly. But that there might be some really rich conversations that would emerge from the music that we choose. And there's usually a connection and a thread through the program that is the vehicle to have those sorts of conversations. So I try to present music that I think is engaging, that will challenge them, but that will also, nourish their souls in terms of just being able to sing. I always try to attend to that part of who they are. And I just try to study my scores as best I can.
What was your most memorable, inspiring moment from a past clinic?
I think, so for me, I think my most memorable, I guess, you're referring to like all states and things like that, honor choirs conduct. I think it had to be the first one that I ever did, because I never auditioned for or sang in an all-state choir myself growing up. I mentioned earlier in this interview, I went to Catholic school all the way through, even through high school and even through my undergrad. And so I didn't know about them. I didn't know they existed. I wasn't in the public school system. And so the first time I got hired to do an all-state, I was like, of course, by that point, I knew what they were. And I was like, oh my goodness, like, this is this really big thing. And first time I'm going in here, I'm going to lead it, and I don't even know what to expect. And I want it to be great, but I hope I don't mess it up. And it was exhausting. They're all exhausting, but it was amazing. And I got to lead a treble choir for my first one. And I just felt like I really connected with the women in the group. And it was a really, really wonderful experience for me. And so that's probably my most memorable one because of those factors.
Beautiful. And what about for you, Dr. MacMullen?
Yeah, I would say two things come to mind. One is general and one is specific. When students audition for the All-State, regardless of the state, it's a very extensive process. And so they come to the experience with a readiness to think about things and to feel things that maybe they don't always acknowledge. And they're kind of put into this synthetic environment where everybody's equal. It's not their home choir. And so there's a receptivity from the musicians involved that I think is, it's such a privilege for anyone to step in front of people who are ready, willing, and eager, and also equal. And so I just always walk away from the experience grateful for little moments where students are thinking or experiencing something for the first time. And I remember as a kid, I sang in all-state choir and how important those experiences were for me. So I definitely identify with that. And of course, in 2017, it was that was the year that I was able to conduct the Texas All-State, which is like a huge pool of people to still to this tiny group, right? I think over 30,000 people apply or audition, and then it gets to be really, really small. And so it was just an exhilarating experience to work with those musicians, and also I worked with the treble choir, and amazingly, some students who make it into one of the gendered choirs are disappointed that they didn't make it into the mixed choir. And so it was a great joy for me to work with those musicians and to create our own experience that was valid and exciting. And I'll never forget that.
And Dr. Joseph, what is a lesson that you hope students would learn from your clinics?
I hope that they just take away the joy of getting past the notes and the rhythms. And, you know, they really get to embody every piece for what it is. When I'm doing clinic, I tend to pick a wide variety of styles on purpose so that we have lots of different types of music to work on. And so I hope that they're able to take away sort of, you know, the joy of every piece and making music together on them.
And Dr. MacMullen, I actually had the pleasure of meeting you earlier this year in January at Houston Chamber Choir's Choral Clinic, and it was a part of our Hear the Future Invitational Festival that we have every year. It was my first choral clinic. I didn't participate, I was support staff, but I couldn't really get over how informative, exhilarating, as you said, and fun it was for the kids and me, just watching them learn and watching them interact with you. The energy level was an all-time high, and it's like it fed the entire building. And I was really appreciative to be a part of that. How was your experience with the Houston Chamber Choir, and getting to not only interact with those students that you might not have had previous relationship with? So it was just meeting them at that first moment in time, getting to know their repertoire, and then going right into the action. What was that experience like for you overall?
Well, thank you for your kind words. I had such fun. And for me, it was a true joy to see teachers who are doing such great work and to watch the fruits of that labor, their relationships with their students. So it was great fun. And I also just appreciated the what I would call like the diversity of schools. I felt like there were lots of different school models that came in from the Houston area, and I appreciated that because I thought that there was such a breadth and depth to the musicians that were there, and it felt to me like a really student-centered experience, and so it was just a joy to be a part of.
Absolutely. You can definitely tell that not only did students and the teachers have an open mind going into the process, but it was also an open heart. They were all just so ready, and it was incredible. And
yeah, I agree with
you. I was wondering if you have any tips for student attendees and how they can definitely get the most out of a clinic experience going forward.
I think be open and flexible and ready for an adventure. You know, I feel like it's kind of like dancing with someone that you've never danced with. And so just to go with it, have fun, try some new ideas. And when we are in a clinic setting, they really are just new ideas. It might be different than what your teacher has said or what you're typically doing, or we may ask you to phrase something in a new way. But that's the great thing about art, it's flexible, and beauty is in the eye of the beholder. So I would just say be open, try things, and then you can walk away informed to make your own decisions about your own creation and your own art.
Absolutely. And Dr. Joseph, you are scheduled as a clinician for the upcoming 2021 TMEA conference. It was recently announced that the conference will be virtual this coming year. A shock, but with the safety precautions being an utmost priority, the decision was absolutely essential, completely understandable. But I wanted to know, as you prepare for the conference with the new information in mind, what are you looking forward to adapting as a part of your choral clinic experience?
Well, as I understand it, and I don't know how official this is yet, but as far as the all-state choirs go, I was told that they're looking at possibly pushing them to June. But I don't think that they're going to be taking place in the virtual format with the rest of the conference. So I'm hopeful that the June dates will pan out, because I really think the all-state experience is definitely an in-person experience. And if not, I hope that maybe I'll get invited to do it a different year. But I'm kind of in a holding pattern right now. I don't know how it's going to pan out just yet, but they told me to sort of hold some June dates and they'll talk about it and get back to me.
Do you have anything in mind as far as what you want to present as a part of your clinic?
Well, alongside the committee, I picked a program, and so I was hired to conduct the TTBB choir. So I'm really excited about that. It's actually my first time conducting TTBB all-state ensemble. So I'm hopeful that we'll get to work on that repertoire that we picked together. So.
And your university choirs get to learn from you daily, both you, Dr. Joseph, and you, Dr. MacMullen. I want to know, do you utilize the same tactics in your courses, in your choir rehearsals at the university as you do in a choral clinic?
For me, I use some of the same things, but it also depends on, as I mentioned earlier, not every honor choir or all-state choir is the same. And so I adjust based on the ensemble that's in front of me. And then the other thing is with the university choirs, we're working with them over an entire year, several months. And so with an all-state experience, it's truncated to a weekend. And so some of the teaching is adjusted based on that.
Absolutely. Now, how about you, Dr. MacMullen?
Yeah, I think the schedule is pretty pivotal in pacing your time with an all-state. You may work with the students for 8 hours a day, and so you have to be really mindful of their stamina and engagement. And so that certainly factors into how I handle rehearsals with an all-state or a clinic. And then, of course, the difference in relationship is quite pivotal in terms of the interaction. When you're working with an honor choir, you have a finite amount of time, and at a certain point you have to choose what you're going to try and conquer and what you're going to let go of, because you can't get to everything. And so I think because your learning journey with your university choir is longitudinal, and with the all-state it's very distilled, very focused. I think that I introduced a piece with my university choir yesterday. We didn't sing it at all. We simply moved to it, and we'll come back to it next week. And so you have sort of those longitudinal steps that you can employ, and you can't do that in an all-state because it will be over the next day.
Very good points. And I just have one more question. I'd love to know about you and your choirs. What's next for you? Any upcoming projects that we could celebrate and look forward to in this upcoming school year and beyond?
Well, this was going to be a great school year. But it's kind of been, I just got notified yesterday that it's looking like my university is going to have the same sanctions on ensembles and rehearsals next semester as they do this semester, and I'm not allowed to meet my choir face to face at all, which is pretty, it's been pretty sad. We had a really big year planned with lots of fun projects. We were invited to perform at ACDA National in Dallas, and so that's not happening. So I don't know. I've been thinking about future projects. I may work on another CD next year, something like that. That's something that I can plan sort of far out and look forward to. I've been kind of thinking up different projects. Like I have one idea of all repertoire of female composers. We haven't put out a Christmas recording, and I have a soft spot for that repertoire, so we may do that. So that's kind of what I'm thinking about. But this year is sort of, it's just a different kind of year.
Great.
Well, so we're able to meet in person at UNT with lots of regulations. And so we have a certain number of students who are allowed in the room at one time, and we are all masked. And so I've decided to lean into the mask idea and to exploit the idea, because we have to wear masks when we perform, so why not maximize the mask? And so the program that we're working on, which will also probably be, we were supposed to also present not a performance, but an intercession at ACDA National about transitions in performance. And so we're still going to work toward that goal, but we'll be doing so remotely. So it'll involve some pre-recorded footage. But we're exploring the idea of the mask that we wear on social media and online, that the presence that many of us present is a sort of mask for the reality. And so there's a really cool piece of music that Rick Biella shared with me, hymn to Axiom. And if you haven't listened to it, you should check it out. But it's all about data collection online. It's by an artist, Vienna Tang. But that's going to serve as sort of the crux of the program. And so we'll be exploring, and we'll be wearing masks beyond just our medical masks. So I'm going to try and be as creative and lean into the mask idea in the immediate. So that's, and it's hard, for all of us, it's hard to make plans beyond this year because so much is in limbo and we're not sure how long we'll be in the current state of practice. And so as I'm sure Dr. Joseph has experienced, the best laid plans this year change about every 2 weeks. And so you prepare and then you change, and you prepare and you change. So, but yeah, we're leaning into the mask idea.
Cool.
I forgot about this. We're also doing a progressive ceremony of carols with I have a treble choir, Calandra. It's new at UNT. And we're going to do an outdoor progressive ceremony of carols where we have multiple harps in different stations, and the audience will travel from harp to harp and hear a movement and then go to the next harp, because people can be outside. Otherwise, we're just performing in an empty hall. And so that is also in the works. I hope that it comes to fruition in November.
It's wonderful. Lemonade, the most amazing lemonade, it sounds like. Dr. Joseph, Dr. MacMullen, thank you again for this discussion. It was wonderful getting a chance to talk with you and hear just all about your plans and your drive for music education. It's so refreshing, and I know it's at a time when it's a lot of change, but just the fact that you're willing to change and you're ready to change for the students. And it's just wonderful. So thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thanks so much for having us.
Thank you, April.
Special thanks to our donors and partners for their consistent support. To our phenomenal guests, Dr. Deanna Joseph and Dr. Kristina Caswell MacMullen, and to you, our listeners, for tuning in. And now, please enjoy the first movement of To the Hands, composed by Carolyn Shaw, performed by the Georgia State University Singers, and Warum, composed by Johannes Brahms and performed by the UNT University Singers. The Houston Chamber Choirs with One Accord is your one-stop shop for choral joy. If you enjoyed this podcast, help us to continue our mission to grow the esteem and appreciation of choral music by sharing, reviewing, and subscribing to our content. As a 501c3 nonprofit, support from listeners like you allows us to continue to create new and exciting programming. For more information about us and how you can support our work, please visit houstonchamberchoir.org/give.